In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
Welcome back to another edition of the Daily Memphian's Memphis Grizzlies podcast. This is your host, Grizzlies writer Drew Hill, joined as always by columnist Chris Herrington. We've been on pause for a little bit because we are in the middle of the NBA dead period where there is no NBA news whatsoever. I know this excites you, Chris, for the most part. That changed today, though. We got a form of Grizzlies news today. But right. Before we get into Grizzlies talk today, how is it trying to get back into the NFL? How's that process going?
It's been pretty smooth, actually, for listeners who don't know. I've been talking about it on the Jeff Calkins show, but for listeners who are not crossover listeners, I grew up a big NFL fan, and then I sort of drifted away from it as I entered adulthood, basically. And it's been a thing where every 5 to 10 years I get back in the NFL, and it lasts a couple years, and I fall back out. And so I've been out for a little while, but now that I'm living in an NFL city, I really wanted to get back in. And I was too busy last year to get my head around it. But this year I'm doing it, and I've taken a couple of active measures. I'm back in a fantasy football league for the first time in about 10 years. And I have tentative plans to go to an NFL game, the Bengals at Packers in mid-October, which should be a good one. So I think I'm back, baby. I'm back. So I prepped. I'm a big draft guy. I don't know what your history is with fantasy leagues. I've been in all kinds of football, baseball, and basketball over the years. My thing is that I'm good at the draft and I'm bad at managing the team after the draft. I really like the draft, so I sort of over-prepare and then I under-manage. That's sort of the way it usually works for me. So I've used the draft prep process to get my head around the NFL again.
Well, that's fun. At some point, we should do a fantasy basketball thing and talk about Grizzlies players. I've never played fantasy basketball. I'm an avid fantasy football player. I love the NFL. So it's very exciting for me to hear Chris Herrington on the radio at 10 o'clock talking NFL football. Although, I got to say, I can't get with your team, man. I'm out, fully out.
I can't get with my team either. You tell me what you don't like about my team.
Well, I'm a Bears fan, Chris. So
okay.
The Packers just disgust me in general. And maybe, you know what? Maybe you deserve it because of the way that, the Grizzlies have sort of gone recently. The Packers are like the most privileged franchise in the NFL. They just replace star quarterback with star quarterback, and they never seem to ever be bad. And they have a huge fan base that most of them don't exist in Wisconsin.
Well, the quarterbacks don't seem to be bad until their careers with the Packers end, and then they're bad in other ways. That's sort of been the history. Let's hope Jordan Love breaks that streak. But no, that's a pretty good run to go from Favre to Rodgers to Jordan Love. So my confession.
There's notable quarterbacks that I despise. So yeah. Jordan Love, I don't have a reason to really hate yet. But
so my thing, I didn't randomly choose the Packers. I sort of adopted the Steelers as a kid. I was a Steelers fan as a kid. But then when I got to college in the Twin Cities, I had a roommate who lived and died by the Vikings in 1 year. So every Sunday, we're hanging out in the room watching the Vikings, and he's throwing his phone against the wall when interceptions are thrown and whatever. And then my best friend is from Wisconsin, and he is now, was not then, although his dad was, but he is now a Packers season ticket holder. So those are sort of my entry points to those two teams, and I just like the idea of the Packers. I like the small market. I like the community owned. I like the whole vibe,
Yeah, well, we got to move on because no one cares about our NFL conversation here. But the Packers are a very fake small market. They're a big market team that exists in a small market, if that makes sense. They're like the most historic team in the league that's been around for generations that has a massive fan base, but just happens to be in a small town. Anyway, right. No one cares about our NFL takes. Or my Packers hate. They're here to listen to us talk Grizzlies. And like I said, we did get one bit of Grizzlies news dropped in early September, usually the time we get no Grizzlies news. And that is Omax Prosper. I think it's Olivier Maxence Prosper. I think that's the correct pronunciation, but I might have to double check that. Is signing a two-way deal with the Grizzlies. He was the 24th overall pick in the 2023 draft. 6'7" forward. Played 2 seasons with the Mavericks. Appeared in 92 games. 3.5 points per game. 2.2 rebounds per game. In the end, like, I think that this is just an opportunity to bolster the front court again for the Grizzlies. Um, who knows how much we'll see him get to play? He might get a chance to play early in the season if Edie and Jaren aren't available. Um, but I think there's really two parts to this addition. It's like, all right, what does Omax bring? And then second, well, I guess that means Jahmai Mashack is going to start the season with the hustle, which is indeed what will happen here.
Right.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, those who follow me on Blue Sky may have noted like 5 days ago when Omax Prosper was released by the Mavericks. I'm actually following up on a post by my friend Matt Herlica, but I co-signed it that I thought he was an obvious person for the Grizzlies to look at for a two-way. Of course, I think he was an obvious person for a lot of teams to look at for a two-way. So there's no guarantee, even if the Grizzlies were interested, they were going to get him. But I just think it's an attempt on talent. You get some talent in, you take a look at it, maybe something comes of it, maybe something doesn't. But it's also talent that brings a little bit more roster balance because, as I've noted, the Grizzlies are small, and like on the perimeter, they have a lot of small guys. Like he's a 6'7", 6'8" wing with a 7'1" wingspan, and that's like the only other guy they have that's built like that is Gigi Jackson. Like they just don't have all their wings are on the small side, really. And so he's more of a, combo wing length kind of guy. I liked him. Those who hang on every word of this podcast may remember when we did our draft preview 2 years ago.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, the Grizzlies had the 25th pick in that draft, and we did our list of like the guys we liked late first, and he was actually my number one guy. They ended up trading that pick before the draft in the Marcus Smart deal, so the Grizzlies didn't use that pick. He was my number one guy, and he has done nothing. To be clear, he's done nothing in the NBA.
No.
But what I liked about him then, and I'm still sort of intrigued by now, is his athletic profile and his background in college suggests he could be a plus defender in the NBA. 6'7", 6'8", 7'1" wingspan, sturdy build, good athlete. He was a guy coming out of college who looked like he could be a plus defender, and the question was, can he do anything on offense? Can you teach him how to shoot? Can he learn how to shoot? And the answer so far is no. He's a career like 26, 27% three-point shooter. But I like guys who can defend at the NBA level, and I think he can probably the stats are not much because the sample's small, but like his steal rate was very high last year. His rebound numbers have been good. I think he's a guy who can defend at the NBA level, and the question is, can he become anything on offense? And I think on a two-way, you get him into a two-way, and you work with him, and you see what comes of it. And maybe something comes of it, maybe nothing comes of it, but at least there's a chance with a guy like that he turns into something. And I think a lot of guys you put on two ways, there's not a chance.
Yeah, no, I agree. Where he fell in the draft, that 23rd spot, like I remember 2 years ago when we were talking about the draft, there was like a chance he was going to go higher than that. Like he was rising on draft boards, and I think it was just the physical tools element to this. And there's a lot of players taken in that range that never become much.
Yeah.
Like that's he just the limited opportunity mixed with, the situation in which he's been in Dallas, like it never really allowed him, I think, to hit the ground running or play a pivotal role in the team or anything of that nature. And part of that is just talent, right? If you were that good, they'd find a way to put you out there. But it does feel like there is some mystery here. Maybe not full mystery because he's, like you said, he's still shooting in the 20s when it comes to three-point percentage. But there's a chance maybe the Grizzlies could discover something with a player like this, which I think is better than signing, another player like a PJ Hall, who it feels like they're at a little closer to an age cap and they're just filling a role for you in the short term because you have a shortage in the front court. So I don't mind the signing. I mean, the other big part of this is the Jahmai Mashack part of this, and I don't know if Are you done on Omax? Do you have anything more to add on him before we move
No. I just
on?
think that's a player type that I think is valuable, and the Grizzlies don't have a lot of those player types. And so, the only other one they have, Gigi Jackson, was a defensive disaster last season. So this guy might be the only 6'7", 6'8" guy in the roster who can defend on the perimeter. So that could be useful. On Mashack, I mean, I had reported, I guess is the word, I'd suggested on draft night that his future, he would have a future with the Grizzlies, and it may or may not be on a two-way. It didn't necessarily need to be on a two-way to have a future with the Grizzlies. And I think if Prosper had not become available, Mashack may have still gotten the two-way. I think he was sort of the default for the third two-way unless something else popped up, and something else popped up. But I think the Grizzlies always had in their back pocket an understanding that they can develop him as a part of their organization without using a two-way on him if it came to that. And so I think that's going to be the case. He's going to be, it's both of our understandings. He's going to be on the Memphis Hustle. The Grizzlies will retain his NBA rights. In theory, he could go sign overseas. It's sort of like Tariq Bavarovich, who was the last pick in the second round, right? He went back overseas. Mashack could go sign somewhere outside the NBA orbit, but he can't go sign with another NBA team. The Grizzlies have those rights. So he'll be on the Memphis Hustle. The Grizzlies will him. They'll retain his rights. And then if things go well, he'll move up at some point. Who knows? I mean,
It could be this season.
Yeah, often you go back over the years, it's pretty common for two-way slots to open up during the season for the Grizzlies. Either a guy on a two-way gets cut, or a guy on a two-way moves up to the main roster, and that opens up a spot. That kind of stuff happens all the time. So if things go well with Mashack this year, he'll probably find himself moving up in the pecking order with the Grizzlies. But it'll start as a non-roster Memphis Hustle player.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts on this. One is that where my mind went initially is that a player like Jahmai Mashack starting in the G League is definitely not the worst thing for him, because that's a player that has a level of defensive talent and tenacity, and you don't have to worry about the quote unquote dog. We've spent all summer talking about dog aspect to him. You do have to wonder about the offense. Well, at the NBA level, there's not a lot of shots to go around, period. And there's definitely not a lot of shots to go around for Mashack. At the G League level, the Grizzlies can just encourage him to get as many up as he wants. So, as a starting point, I know that's probably not what he wanted. He probably wanted to start on a two-way contract for several reasons, money included. But as a starting point for your career, I think that it's a natural launching point for a player of that style like Jahmai Mashack. So that, I think, is a plus. The other thing I thought about it was the same thing. Just he might find his way onto a two-way contract, and there's a very good chance that it could be this year, right? Because I don't think it's a secret at all that the Grizzlies went and added PJ Hall to try to backfill front court spots while Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson are out. Well, what happens when Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson come back and they have a healthy front court, or Gigi looks good and he looks like a front court player, and now all of a sudden the need for a player like PJ Hall, who's not the same kind of bet, is more of a insurance guy than a bet on the future. That spot could come open and a guy like Jahmai Mashack could fill in. But we see these spots come open all the time. And so, yeah, I would not be surprised whatsoever if Jahmai Mashack is a two-way player for the Memphis Grizzlies this season. It just would not shock me. I think that there's a very good chance that we eventually get to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way it happens. Someone moves out of one of the two ways, or in that way. The other way it could happen is, get to the trade deadline, or at some point there's some move that opens up a main roster spot, and someone, maybe Javon Small they really like. They want to get him on one of those long-term, short, low cost deals or what have you. So there are different ways it could open up. The other thing with Mashack, you make a good point about it would probably help him more to get heavy minutes at the G League level than sit on the Grizzlies bench early on in his career to develop the offense. I think that's a great point. From the Grizzlies' perspective, one of the things about having guys on the two-way is the ability to play them at the NBA level. And they're so loaded with guys of that size, it's going to be hard for Javon Small to find his way onto the court, much less Mashack. I mean, we're looking at the depth chart. We're trying to figure out where Vince Williams is going to play. Cam Spencer, how's he going to get minutes? And so for Jahmai Mashack, who would be the second two-way guy, 6'4" and under on a team already loaded with, 6'5", 6'4" and under guys, there's just not a path to immediate playing time for him with the Grizzlies unless there are a lot of injuries that hit that position. And so for the Grizzlies, it's better to have some other kind of player in a two-way to start the season. And for Mashack, it's better. It'd be better to be on better to sit on the bench for money purposes, but for the career development purposes, to your point, it's better for him to be with the hustle, logging minutes in those games.
All right, moving on. We have a Grizzlies player playing basketball this summer. I imagine they're all playing basketball, just in different capacities. We have a Grizzlies player playing basketball games that count this summer, and that is Santi Aldama, who is playing in Eurobasket at the moment. And it's interesting because Santi is playing a role that I don't know if he even necessarily thought that he would play when he was like one of the big time prospects coming out of Spain. But Spanish basketball has changed quite a bit. Like, there's no Marc Gasol, there's no Pau Gasol. They didn't make it very far in the Olympics last year. They are, I can't remember, I think it was like 4 years ago maybe that they last played Eurobasket, and Spain is the defending champion coming into this year. As we record, he is playing against Giannis Antetokounmpo and Greece, and Spain trails 41-33 in the second quarter. That is as we are recording this right now. So not looking good, because if Spain loses, they'll get bounced out of the group round. None of that really matters if you're a Grizzlies fan and you don't care about Eurobasket. What matters is how Santi is playing individually. Last game, 19 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists. Like, I feel like we're just doing this all over again, and maybe we're just grasping for straws here. But, we all talked about, oh, well, maybe Santi's strong showing in the Olympics is going to be is going to precede some sort of breakout. And here we go again. If you want to make that up, you just go ahead and do it, because Santi's playing really well again for the national team as the center of that Spanish national team this summer at Eurobasket. To what degree do you think international basketball matters, maybe, in prep for an NBA season?
Oh, I don't know. I think obviously, there's risk of injury, but there's risk of injury in an open gym. Injury in an open gym, as we've seen, with Jaron earlier this year. So that's not that big of a
Gigi
deal.
last year. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a wear and tear fatigue aspect that, sometimes people wonder about. I don't think this is going to be I don't know if they're going to go all the way to the final game, Spain. So I don't know if it's going to be that big of a deal. I don't necessarily put a lot into it. I do note that he seems to be the best player on that team, but that team is not what it was. The golden generation, they called it has passed on. He would have been an awesome, fourth, fifth guy on those peak, Spanish teams of yesteryear. And now he's forced into this leading role in a team that's not as talented. But it seems like he might be their best player. You noted one of the box scores, but like in the Italy game, the last game he played, he led them in minutes. He led them in scoring. And so, is that good for him? Probably. But on the other hand, it's a role that's different than the role he'll play with the Grizzlies. So I don't have a firm conviction in terms of making too much of it.
Yeah, at least in America, the most prominent player on the Spanish national team besides Santi Aldama, trivia time? Do you know who that would be?
Well, the Hernan Gomez brothers. They're
right.
former
I was
NBA
gonna
players.
make a joke and say Bo Cruz. Bo Cruz
right.
from the movie Hustle. That's Santi Aldama's probably most prominent teammate, at least for us here in Europe. There's probably guys that star on some of the teams over there, and so things are a little different. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what to make of it. Like it feels like every single year we're waiting on the Santi breakout. And it's not like that dream is not dead. He's in the age range, the target age range, and he plays a position where when breakouts happen, it's typically around age 25, 26, and I think he's 24 right now, so I could see it. I still could see it. I'm not ready to give up on that yet.
Yeah, I mean, he had a good year last year. He sort of trailed off along with the team late season. He had the calf injury, and then the team sort of trailed off. I thought he was one of, with a month to go in the season, to me, he was a top 5 or top 6 guy in terms of 6 man of the year candidates. And that sort of trailed off a little bit. So I don't know how much additional ceiling I think Santi has beyond what he's shown. But to show what he's shown more consistently, and we'll see what the opportunity he gets will be, even with the contract they just gave him, I don't necessarily project him as you look up and he's going to be a starter on the team, averaging 17 points a game. I don't necessarily see that happening, especially with the way the Grizzlies are constructed. But you never know. With Edey out, we talked about this on the radio a couple weeks ago. With Edey out, they could look up and see that, to get the most talent on the floor, they are playing him starter minutes, if not starting him, with Jaren.
Here's the thing about Santi, because I feel like he got, I'm generalizing based on what I see on social media, which I'm constantly guilty of. But I feel like there was some frustration with him towards the or towards the end of the season, and he like, I'm not making stuff up. He didn't play as well
with his defense and physicality in
right.
particular.
I will also say this on behalf of Santi, and I like Santi as a player. I think he brings some variety to the team that they need, like that the Grizzlies don't have other players like him. I also think he brings some fire, some anger that the team needs, right? Like Santi Aldama may be guilty of We saw the tussle with Desmond Bane at the end towards the end of the season. Like maybe he's guilty of being a little bit too pushy and over dramatic in some of the moments, like when he's getting so ticked off out on the court. But you need players like that. Like the Grizzlies were pretty dang lifeless towards the end of last season, and like they needed more of that version of Santi. So I think he does bring two elements to the team that are pretty necessary for the Grizzlies in terms of his fit.
Well, there's a lot of things he brings. One ostensibly small thing he brings that I tend to harp on sometimes, because I think I'm sort of frustrated the Grizzlies have gone away and don't have more of this on their roster when Jahmai is their point guard. He plays above the rim. They don't have a lot of guys who play above the rim. Santi is the best, like, go get the ball, throw it, let Ja throw it up, and go be Randy Moss and go catch it. He is the best guy like that on the team right now. My hope is that Cedric Howard's going to bring some of that to the mix. But, like, please get John Morant lob threats. And so Santi, that's one thing he brings, is he can go get the ball. He's probably the guy who converted the most lobs from John Morant last season. He also handled the ball and he can shoot it. There's a lot of skill there. I think the Grizzlies are intrigued with him as sort of a small forward and some lineups that will allow that. We talked about that earlier. It's going to be a little bit harder to get to that with the way the roster is constructed. But, we've talked about how it's a mystery who the third best player in this team is. It's possible it's Santi Aldama this season.
Yeah, no, it's definitely possible. And it's true, too, on your point about above the rim. If I were to say to you, the Grizzlies just made a highlight play, who made it? Your first guess would be Ja, and I think your second guess would be Santi. Like, Jaren is a great player. He's the second best player on the team. Right. At times, the best player on the team. But he's not a highlight guy. Not quite as much a highlight guy.
Not on offense as much, right? If Jared's making a highlight, it might be a big block. But Santi, as we know, likes to reverse dunk. He gets that corner back with Jay Huff gone. He can be the reverse dunk king of the Grizzlies again.
He can reclaim the throne.
Yeah, and he's the guy who's most likely to go up and finish a lob. And John Morant is maybe better at throwing the lob than anybody in the league. Him, Luka, Trae Young. That's like the elite circle of lob throwers. So I just think you got a guy who can get out in the open court and throw lobs like that. You need people who can catch them. And, maybe Gigi Jackson, if he can get in the lineup more consistently, gives them that aspect. I think Cedric Howard, I have a lot of hope, will give them that aspect. But they don't have a lot of options with that.
All right. Well, I think that's most of the Grizzlies-centric news that's going on at the moment. The big news yesterday, this Pablo Torre story on Kawhi Leonard.
Right.
I'm very curious. I don't really want to... Like, what did you make of the report? Did you watch it? I sat and watched it in full. I found it to be pretty gripping. What did you make of it? Do you think that the reporting was strong enough to really insinuate that the Clippers are at fault here?
Yes. Insinuate is different than prove.
Right.
But yeah, I think it seems extremely fishy. I suspect it may be carefully done enough that there's legal deniability there. You have this weird situation where you have this company that is a team sponsor, and companies around the league are team sponsors. You got your Grizzlies have like Robin Hood or whatever on their jersey, and like you have various companies that are involved with sponsorship deals with teams, right? So you have this company that's a sponsorship deal with the Clippers. So Steve Ballmer, owner of the Clippers, has invested money in this company, right? So you have money coming in from Steve Ballmer to the company.
A fraudulent company, we should note.
Well, I mean, the company now in legal problems, but apparently it was an actual company that provided actual services. Like it wasn't like a.
But those services were not indeed provided, which they pled guilty to wire fraud.
I mean, they didn't. They never did any tree work. You're saying they literally never did anything.
It seemed that's towards the end of the Pablo podcast. It seemed to also insinuate that yes, that it was that it was not actually being done to the degree that they were selling.
What do you mean by it?
Planting trees.
Okay. Well,
they were not planting the trees, at least not even close to the level that they were promised.
All right. That I don't know about.
They would do. Yeah.
Whether it's a real company or fraudulent company, it's a company, sponsorship deal with the Clippers. Steve Ballmer investing in the company. So money is coming in from Steve Ballmer to this company. This company that has a sponsorship thing with the Clippers does a marketing deal with Kawhi Leonard, which also not unusual generally. But now you got money coming in from Steve Ballmer to this company and coming out from the company to Kawhi Leonard. So that's a little at least a little questionable. But what makes it even more questionable is it's a lot of money going out to Kawhi Leonard for nothing, for basically no reason. Like it's an unusual amount of money for that kind of arrangement, it seems, and it's an arrangement where he literally didn't do anything. And so it certainly looks from a distance like they were laundering money through this middleman from Steve Ballmer to Kawhi Leonard. That's what it looks like. I just don't know. All I know is what's been reported on this thing. We'll see what the NBA does with it, but it certainly seems like it could be that it's set up in a way that they can skirt their way out of it, but it looks fishy to me.
Yeah, no, I think it's certainly possible that the NBA won't be able to find anything that's actionable. And I don't know what they would do because there's really no precedent for something like this.
Not like that exactly. I mean, about 20 years ago, the Minnesota did an under the table deal with Joe Smith. But that was a different thing. They basically agreed to a contract they weren't allowed to negotiate yet. It wasn't an actual exchange of money. But that got found out, and they lost, I think, 2 first-round picks for that. So that would be some kind of precedent for this. But I think it's a can of worms because all over there's been jokes for years about, Udonis Haslem, on the minimum for, 15 years in a row or whatever. Or, Tim Duncan taken under market value to stay with the Spurs, and people wonder what's going on there. Dirk Nowitzki was like that. People wondered about what other kind of business, agreements does he have with Mark Cuban outside of this? It's a kind of a wink, people joke about it kind of thing. And so you got to think that this is a can of worms the NBA is not happy to have to be opening up. And so We'll see what comes of that.
No, absolutely. And I think if you're a reporter, you have a trained eye to the exact wordage that's used in news statements. The one thing I found notable, and it was something I noticed it first, and then Pablo actually tweeted it out, was that in the statement that the Clippers gave to Pablo calling the report provably false, they basically said that this is provably false, that we did not circumvent the salary cap, and that is provably false. Then the Clippers issued a statement to Shams yesterday, and they just called the notion absurd and removed the provably false.
Right.
So I don't know, but that doesn't seem to be a very good sign for the Clippers. We'll see what happens.
What seems to be being suggested from the Clipper side that I've seen is that this company itself is at fault, that this was a shady company that defrauded Steve Ballmer, right? Not that Steve Ballmer used the shady company to funnel money to Kawhi Leonard. And so maybe that will be what they claim. But the main thing I look at it and I say, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Kawhi Leonard, in terms of his actual salary, makes a huge, big gob of money. And dude plays half the games. Is that not enough? Do we really need to be funneling an extra $28 million to Kawhi Leonard?
Yeah, there were a lot of jokes out there saying, are you telling me that Kawhi Leonard had a no-show job and it's not basketball?
Right. And it's not small forward for the Clippers. Right.
Oh, man. But that obviously was a huge report. And you can make of it what you want. I think the podcast was very entertaining at the very least. I was on edge watching it. and he does a good job of presenting the podcast and stuff like that because he makes it gripping. He makes teases and then puts you on pause and then finally gives you the information. So that I thought that they did a good job of the presentation on that sort of thing. But that I didn't want to leave, didn't want to get out of here today without mentioning that.
I don't think. I mean, the Grizzlies are hoping to be in a Western Conference playoff race. The Clippers also. I doubt anything. Whatever comes of this, I doubt it's anything that will have any competitive bearing on the Clippers this season.
Doubtful. I mean, what is the max punishment that they could even give them beyond taking away draft picks?
I mean, I don't know. I got no idea. Like, could
they just suspend Kawhi Leonard? Be like,
yeah,
Kawhi Leonard, you're suspended for the season, and you'll get your paycheck, but you don't get to pay.
Well, it seems like if anything is determined here, punishment would go towards the organization, not towards the player.
Yeah.
For this, and so that's why I think the precedent for this kind of stuff is more the draft pick area, right? Which is more of a forward-looking thing.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens there. Anything else before we get out of here? Anything on your mind NBA wise?
No, I mean, I'm working on some long-term stuff that's less about the coming season, but I'm starting to we're getting to the point now where I'm going to have to start getting my head into the current season, but I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, I apologize to the readers. I'm also working on a long-term thing. So we both are kind of cooking up great stuff that will be at the Daily Memphian. It just won't be at the Daily Memphian in the short term. So I know I'm looking forward to people reading our stuff, and I know it's another anniversary season. Nobody knows the history of the team like Chris does. So that should be really fun. How was the Minnesota State Fair? Life has more than basketball, section of the pod. How was the Minnesota State Fair?
It was good. Cheese curds were consensus of favorite food. I really liked, and we've since got a bunch. We brought home. I have in my freezer here downstairs, my chest freezer. But I think they call them cider licks, which are basically like popsicles, but it's all made out of fresh apple cider, Minnesota apples. So frozen like apple cider pops. We had one of those, and I brought a bunch of those home. Can't go wrong with a vanilla ice cream cone in the dairy building while watching the Butter Princess sculptures get made. Saw the largest pumpkin, 1,500 pounds.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's
so
crazy.
Good stuff. Good stuff at the fair.
I gotta say, for the people that don't know, Chris has a son who's very tall. Like, how tall is your son?
Oh, well, I have an update for you this week because they started school this week and we measured him first day of school. He is now cleared 6'6".
And how old is he?
15.
I mean, we talked about the Grizzlies needing size on the wing. I don't know,
right.
15-year-old. But anyway, I laughed because Chris sent me a photo of his son in line for $3 all-you-can-drink milk.
Yeah.
And I was thinking in my head, Chris, stop giving your kid milk. He's not going to fit under the door frames if you just keep feeding him milk at 15 years old.
He got suckered because the way that works, you pay your $3, you get your cup, and you can bring your cup back and get milk whenever you want. But like the fair is big and crowded, so are you going to keep walking back to this place even if you want more milk? No, you're paying $3. You get your 1 cup of milk that you should have paid like $1 for, and then even if you want more milk, you're not going to go back. We got cookies later in the day, and I bought milk fresh for the cookies because we weren't walking all the way back to the milk stand for milk.
Oh man, yeah, I got to make it back to a big state fair like that. My friend's been trying to get me to go to Oklahoma and Texas, which always happens the week of the Texas State Fair, and it's played at the Texas State Fair.
So
that would be cool. I'd be down for Texas State Fair.
My understanding is that the Texas State Fair, because they're growing big in Texas, is the biggest state fair in the country. Minnesota State Fair is the second biggest state fair in the country.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, I gotta make it out there. Well, I don't think we're gonna be back next week. I'm gonna be unavailable next week, so I will be out. And then when we come back, though, we'll have a few podcasts, I'm sure, leading up to training camp. But we'll be on a little bit of a break again here before we come back. But training camp, I think, is now 3 weeks out. A little bit more than 3 weeks out. So
yeah,
at least media day is right around there. So, man, NBA season is getting closer and closer. We got some September Grizzlies news. All is right in the world. All right, that'll do it for us this week. We will be back, like I said, after a little break. But for Drew and for Chris, we're out of here.